So where in the world do we allow for crazy ideas to come about? Because if you're always trying to protect what you have, whether you're a large company or a government, then you're stuck with incremental progress. But if you really want breakthroughs, then you need to be thinking in outlandish ways.
Do you ever consider the possibility that technology is a life form in and of itself? Do you ever consider the possibility that we are somehow locked in some symbiotic relationship to we are the worker bees creating this new life form?
We're going to see a huge change in the car. And again, it's going to come pretty fast, by 10 years, I think.
And a kid in Africa today with a smartphone has access to more information than the President of the United States did 15 years ago.
That the cell phone in one's pocket today, the average smartphone, is 1 million times cheaper, 1 million times smaller, and 1,000 times more powerful than a supercomputer that was $60 million, half a building in size, 40 years ago. So what used to be half a building now fits in your pocket.
Which leads to an obvious conclusion. We are the gods now.
Welcome to the Futurology Podcast. This is episode 6. Jason, aka Blinker Goes Left. And if you guys are listening from iTunes or anywhere else, Futurology is a community on Reddit. We discuss future links, technology, medicine, culture, and at the end of the month we round up the top 5 and we go over them. I have a co-host. His name is Alex, aka SpeakMouthWords on
Hi.
YouTube. How's it going?
Pretty good, pretty well. The last podcast did alright on my channel, actually, about 400 listens or something. They didn't all make it all the way to the end. If you could try again this time, folks, try and stick with us. But yes, it's going well, thank you. It is tough. It's a whole really long podcast, and I don't want to waste anybody's time. So if you feel like we're wasting your time, just stop. And that laugh that you just heard there is the ineffable Daniel Yount, who is self-described composer, futurist, and techno-optomist. Is that what you call yourself?
That is correct.
And he's most famous for doing the music, and is promoted by the Yogscast. And I believe you did the music for the Shadow of Israphel. Is that correct?
I did, and we're still currently doing that. Yes.
You're still currently ongoing. Good stuff.
Wow.
Right, so we discuss the top 5 stories on Reddit's Our Futurology subreddit every 30 days, although we've been a little bit late on this one. You like to lead us in with the first one?
Sure. The first one is, surprise, surprise, another article about 3D printing. This one was the very highest link of the month, 831 upvotes, submitted by Atheist Broker. It's actually just a video, and if you didn't know anything about 3D printing, it would be interesting to you, but since we go over these topics every week, it's something everybody is pretty familiar with. That they start with basics like we can print. If you were to break a coat hook in your house, you don't have to go to a store anymore to get a new hook. You can simply print that out, and then they continue and they go on to organs, food, even concrete for coral reefs, and then some of the stuff on the economy and patents is also interesting. And you guys are both content creators. How important is that going to be?
Oh, it's a very interesting topic, because this is exactly what happened to the music industry when you could convert intellectual property into data and distribute that on the internet. So this is what's happening to actual manufactured materials and designs and stuff. And I would hope that we learned a couple of things about copyright laws and how effective they really are in the last decade or half century about instating these laws. And for me, as I do make music, I do sell my music, and that's how I make income. Mm-hmm. But for me, these laws and people up in arms about copyright and stuff, it's just there's so much it's way too much trouble than it's worth. You know, if I lose a couple of downloads, that's fine, but I don't want to, you know, just limit people to a DRM or something, you know, that's recently happening with like the SimCity debacle, you know, stuff like that. It's just, you know, I found that it's really not worth it. And I know a couple of artists who have that view, you know, the similar view. It's just not worth it. The capacity
of a good remix to publicize a piece of material or anything like that is really underrated, I think, by the people who advocate stringent copyright laws on things like that. And with regards to 3D printing, you are always going to have the first mover advantage on your own ideas, and that's something that you need to capitalize on. I mean, you're like, take my channel for instance. It's not 3D printing. We can only really analogize here, but with my videos, I'm always going to be the first person to upload a nobody paying attention video, unless someone manages to hack into my computer. So likewise with these 3D printing things, if someone comes up with a great design for a household appliance or object or anything like that, the person who tries to sell it first is always going to be the first mover and is going to have this initial advantage, and it's there that they need to make the most money.
I have a question for both of you guys. What happens if somebody remixes an original? Are they allowed to make money off that on YouTube?
On YouTube, see, this is when you get into the shady area. It's I sort of go by the rule or assumption that, you know, if you want to use my music, if you want to just take it and put it in a video that you've made, that's fine. I don't mind that at all. But at least would you mind linking some sort of me in your description, so that if you did use it, you know, instead of preventing people from using it totally, they're now using it and now linking back to me, which in turn feeds people's interest in me, or just popularizes me as an artist more. So that's sort of how I view that debate sort of thing. I'm not sure how you do, Alex.
It's just a courtesy thing. There's nothing. I mean, the effort that I put into my work really isn't enough to justify me saying no, this is mine and mine alone. Especially when I'm nicking images off Google Images and things like that to put into my videos. I'm already just skirting the laws of fair use with my videos, and for me to say to other people, hey, no, stop, would be completely hypocritical of me. So yes, if you want to remix my stuff, that's perfectly fine. If you want to lift it and put it somewhere else, well, you know, people come to my channel for it and not yours. So until I get completely supplanted, I don't really have an issue with it.
Yeah, I mean, I can see playing devil's advocate too, and I know that this is an article about 3D printing, but let's say I made some really great content and then somebody remixed that content, and the majority of his content was what I did, and he went super viral with it, made 6 figures, and yeah, he gave me a link to my YouTube channel, but it was nowhere near 6 figures. So
right,
I think that's what people are also going to be a little bit worried about, how it's going to mess with the economy like that.
Well, it's the job of creators and entrepreneurs to thrive in the market existence that there is, like to thrive under the current market conditions, and not to use the law to bend the market to their own whims.
Exactly.
And that's what you're going to see if you're going to have these people getting angry about 3D printing, is they're probably going to attempt to bend the law to their own design, and that's not a good thing.
Right. And the people that are pushing these laws and whatnot, and that are getting up in arms about stuff like this, they're assuming that we are going to live in the same economy 100 years from now, you know, or just down the road. And I think that I think that somewhere along the road, we're probably going to be transitioning with the help of 3D printing, you know, that we can produce almost any good for just the cost of energy. We're going to be heading towards a sort of a post-scarcity economy, or just an economy where you can get access to necessary materials for little to nothing. And at that point, money really doesn't play such a key role in society as it does today. So I think that's a fair point about how this is so, like, if we just take it and just look ahead, this is going to be so much more helpful down the road. Maybe not right now in our current economy, but where we're headed, this is good. And that's how we want to think. We always want to think ahead of the game and ahead of the ball.
Yep, I agree. Alex, should we move to the next link?
Yeah, well, if that's enough on that, then the next one is a link posted by Reddit user the-pervert, and the link was entitled "More Good News About the Scientific Accident That May Change the World. Big line science, big line rewire." And it's a post about graphene. Our good friend graphene. You could call it a super material. I wouldn't be so tempted to do so, but it was discovered fairly recently in the 2000s, the late 2000s, and it's a very flat. It's a 2D carbon structure that promises to bring a lot of good things about and a lot of good applications. I've forgotten what was in this article for the most part, but if anybody has a better idea, could you please sum it up better?
Yeah, this one was actually for transistors, I believe.
Supercapacitors, I think.
Right. And Daniel, you are a huge fan of graphene.
I've just been hearing a ton of news stories coming out lately about how, I think there was something about they've managed to get a terabit going, between graphene antennas. Stuff like that. It's just that this material is so, it's so malleable to, huge leaps forward that it just excites me beyond belief because, I watched the video about graphene batteries and how you could charge a mobile phone in 5 seconds or so, and then charging an electric car in like a minute or 30 seconds or something like that. I was sold then, and then there comes this news about, how it's a transistor that's super, super powerful, how it's like, now this thing about
the transistors.
But yeah, the transistor. Oh, and the antenna. I'm sorry. Excuse me.
So what does that mean for people who don't know what 1 terabit transfers? But I mean that doesn't mean your LAN cable or your Cat5 is getting 1 gig, right, from the wall.
Right. Well, so from the general gist of what I got from the article about the transistor, the antenna about the terabit, this material has the ability to do that. It's not economically feasible right now, but it just lays the roadmap for that kind of speeds of internet. And really, we're just now seeing with Google Fiber and a bunch of other, gigabit providers, we're just now seeing gigabit. So to hear the word terabit and it be, realistic, it's mind-blowing already.
Alex, I cut you off a minute ago. What were you going to add to that?
Oh, sorry. Yes, so the article, this particular article, was talking about its application with respect to supercapacitors. Now, capacitors are a circuit component that stores charge, and obviously that's always been touted as kind of a replacement of lithium-ion batteries. If those store power, then you could potentially store a potential difference by charging up this supercapacitor. I got a little bit of it in an argument in the comment section of this Reddit section about just how important they are, but I think supercapacitors with regards to energy storage are a fantastic idea, and if graphene can help us get there, then that's wonderful. Energy is the crux of most of our issues. Like water scarcity, for instance, is solved by energy solutions, and food scarcity is solved by water solutions. So this kind of thing, it spreads throughout a lot of the issues that we have. Energy is always going to be the big one, and if if graphene can help us with supercapacitors, which helps us with energy, then that's a wonderful thing.
So, question: you said, Daniel, that we may be able to do 1.5 minute charge times.
Yeah.
Wow. So electric cars are going to be able to charge in a minute and a half?
Yeah, I mean, just insanely quickly, because of the supercapacitor that this graphene is. From what I got from the video, is that it charges extremely quickly, and it holds the charge about the same way as a battery does, and that's something that's never been, possible from a material before. So that's really exciting, and that really just means that, to the average person, it really just means that somewhere down the road, when this material becomes easy to mass produce and put into batteries and put into cars and put into phones and put into everything we have, it just completely eradicates the idea of charging a phone overnight or plugging in your car for more than a minute or so, and that is awesome.
The problems that are introduced by this, however, I mean, you talk about charging a car in a minute and a half. That's a tremendous load on the electrical grid. If you had something like this, there would definitely need to be some infrastructure upgrades in order to provide that amount of energy in such a short space of time. I've seen this is similar to what happens with nuclear fusion, for instance. We know that you can build a bigger tokamak. There's ring fusion reactors. You can build a bigger one of those, and you're sorted. The problem is that there's so much energy going into and out of those. It then becomes an energy redistribution problem, and that's what something like supercapacitors can help with. So what this does, what supercapacitors do, is they provide energy distribution problems and solutions at the same time, and it's about putting them in the right place at the right time.
Wow.
Good.
So it won't be in the next few years that we'll see that. I mean, a lot more has to go into this first, yeah?
That's what I got.
Yeah. But as you might remember, it might have been, was it on the last podcast we talked about the giant amount of funding being put into graphene by the European Union?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So we might see this sooner than we expect.
And I like your predictions usually. So let's say this came out tomorrow. How fast would the gasoline auto industry crumble and get bulldozed by the electric car?
As fast as it takes people to buy a new car, and as fast as the performance capabilities of electric cars can match up. Currently, the best electric car out there is the Tesla Model S, Model X. It's the latest Tesla S, the Tesla Model S, and that's just way too expensive for the average person. So there needs to be a cheap electric car that people don't feel silly driving before it's about the model of the car rather than the these abstract ideas about gas or supercapacitors or whatever.
It makes you think, though, if you're paying $90,000 for a car, but let's say those charge stations are much cheaper than gas, if at all. If like those solar, we have a few solar recharge stations out here, so that's something people have to think about, right? Do I pay $92,000 now for a car that never has to be, I never have to pay for gas again? Or do I buy the $20,000 car and I'm getting gas every week? So yeah, I do think $92,000. I mean, I don't even know if I could get a loan for that much, but it's still something to think about. I want to move on though. Daniel, did you want to take us into link number 3 as our guest host?
Absolutely, I can do that. So link number 3 is about bionic eyes, and the title is Would You Swap a Healthy Eye for a Bionic One?
And that was submitted by Encharky, I believe.
Yes.
You took part in the debates, I think, on the last podcast that we were talking about. So good old Encharky.
And it's a Wired article, and it basically just talks about the idea of transhumanists and how they're always thinking of ways to go beyond human ability. And this is just one of the forms of upgrading your physical structure with new technology. And I think it's a really interesting idea because people don't really think about stuff like this. Normal people would sort of balk at the idea right now, like, why would I take out my healthy eye for a bionic one? But whenever a bionic eye comes out that you can zoom in like 1,000 times, it's just some sort of heads-up display similar to Google Glass or augmented reality, stuff like that. So whenever a bionic eye comes out and is affordable, that has all these new features, you're going to see people start changing their mind. And that's sort of like the cross between socially acceptable and when the technology becomes feasible.
Mm-hmm.
Any ideas on that?
Alex?
Well, yeah. You see this discussion happen analogously in a number of different places. I mean, the initial the initial argument that I think probably was first had is, why would I replace my healthy horse for a mechanical one? And in a similar way, though a horse isn't part of you, replacing an eye for a bionic one is interesting. It's an interesting concept, an interesting idea. There are a couple of issues, as always. I always bring up the issues that have to be overcome.
Sure.
The first being that the current pixel counts on these eyes are low. I believe it's 15 by 15 is the last one I saw. That's just ballpark. It's something around that range. So that's quite a low pixel count. And you've also have to overcome the uncanny valley issue, which a lot of people put as a proper sort of scientific concept. Ooh, the uncanny valley. It's actually a slang term, but it's the idea that things that look similar to humans but are just off are the most scary things. And if you had an eye that was bionic and didn't really quite look right, it's fundamentally disconcerting to a lot of people. So when you have a bionic eye, you have to think about this.
See, because when we started this, I was saying to myself, no, I wouldn't take out my eye even if the bionic one was better. And then Daniel almost had me sold, but you just came back with that. Like you can't get girls with a funky eye.
You can't. I don't think you can now. But when the new II 5S comes out, or II 9S, that'll be the new hot thing, I think.
Yeah.
I think right now we've got mobile. We've got tablets and smartphones, and that's big. The next big thing is looking to be wearable. A watch or augmented reality glasses. I think the next thing is going to be something like this. It goes directly into our central brain, our hub for information. And you can only go so far with glasses on your face, but you can go farther than that with actual eyes. Think about Deus Ex, stuff like that. That they raise some interesting concepts, and in that specific world, Deus Ex, they have a civil debate going on. It's not a flippant issue. It's a huge issue. But I think, if we look out, this is where we're headed, and it's going to be socially acceptable at some point. I don't think
it might even define you, right? Like, ooh, right. Girl, he's got that 9G bionic eye. Look at him.
Look at the same way that cell phones define us now. If you have an iPhone, the first generation, you're kind of looked at weird by the young people.
You're broke.
Yeah. That's just sort of social status by technology. What you can afford and what you get, and for the first time, I think that we're seeing that the public is actually sort of putting a little bit of weight on what kind of computation you have on you, if that makes sense. Like, the public opinion can be swayed by whether you have an iPad 4 or a mini or the newest thing.
The bridging point here will be, so you start off with your Google Glass, for example,
right,
and then that moves to something better, because Google Glass, I'm not incredibly impressed by it. So it moves to a better AR thing, and then that moves to lenses. And if we can find a way, if there's a point at which you can't really tell whether someone's got lenses in or whether they've got a bionic eye, then bionic eyes might be able to slip in under the radar because people just think, oh, they've just got their lenses in.
Yeah. And are you referring to contact lenses?
Yes.
Okay. Just making sure.
Yeah. So it'll go glasses, lenses, eyes, and then no head at all, just in a computer substrate.
And that's when things really get scary.
Yeah. But who knows? By then, it might not be scary anymore. They'll be like, God, it's about time they came out with this.
Right, the same way we feel about Google Glass now. It's not such a huge idea now. It's like when you actually hear about it's a little display at the top right side of your eye. It's like, that's all right.
Right.
There's no societal pushback much. I heard about the bar that banned them, sort of as a joke. But if Google had introduced this 10 years ago, they wouldn't sell a single one. I don't think.
Can I just coin a phrase right now? Baby steps to transcendence. I think is what we're talking about here.
Wow, patent that.
Copyright on that. Yeah. No one steal it.
Yeah, they can remix that, but don't steal it.
Don't make any money off it and attribute it to me, please.
Please make checks payable to Alex.
Okay, let's jump into the fourth link. This was submitted by Trick-ish, and he titled it, "It's official, we can realistically generate people. Astonishingly real, Aubrey Hepburn chills chocolate in new commercial." I botched that title, but you can click on the link and jump in to watch this. It's basically just talking about this video, and it's more of what VFX can do now and what they're going to be able to do. Like, in movies, you saw it in... Did you guys see the new Tron?
I did.
Yeah. In that, I mean, that was almost still creepy, but we're getting there, right?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what I was talking about before with the Uncanny Valley. The way that his that digital face was just kind of off. A little bit disconcerting.
No, I saw The Life of Pi last night, and most of that was CGI. And you had to check yourself at times to figure out, am I looking at something real, or is it something computer generated? And we're getting there. We're getting to that point in post renders where it takes 10 hours to render out a minute of a scene, but eventually we're going to have this sort of graphics power in a game box or something, or a PC or something. So that's really exciting for the future of that industry, and not only video games as we know them today, but video games as we'll know them 10 years from now. That will be something of like VR, with now that we're seeing the Oculus Rift and maybe integration into a lot of other technologies that could track your motion and really put you into the sense of being into that world. And then I guess we have to redefine what we're going to call that. I don't know that video games is a just definition of that sort of thing. I think it's gonna morph into virtual reality, or just some other term. I don't know if video games, you think of Pong or something, a screen, you're sitting down in front of it. But if you're in it and you really feel like you're there, and then exponentially increases to the point where you really can't tell the difference. If you woke up with this thing on your face, would you know any different?
So that brings up a question for both of you guys, but I'll ask Alex first. What do you think that'll do to, everything, the economy? Who's going to fly out on vacation to go to Disney World when they can throw on a helmet and it's just as good?
Well, we've seen a rudimentary version of this occur already. Very rudimentary. It's a game called Second Life. Mm-hmm. And there was a booming economy within Second Life. A lot of people made real-life, actual people money with the stuff that they were doing inside Second Life. So hopefully this will all be fine, and this will all be okay. The effects upon the economy is interesting. People have always got to sell these machines. People have got to make the machines. And if Disneyland loses out on that, well, then it's Disneyland who have probably got to be the ones to put out their virtual reality Disneyland program that they can that they can sell to people. Like I said before earlier on in the podcast, it's the job of the entrepreneur to make money within the current market conditions. So if Disneyland are going to lose out on this, if I don't know, all these sightseeing places are going to lose out on this, then they've got to be the ones to run the scans of their surroundings and augment it themselves. There's a fantastic talk on this kind of thing that I do urge everybody to see, and I'll be putting this in the links at the bottom, which is a talk by the creator of Second Life that he gave to the Singularity University. It's one of the best talks I've ever seen, and it was saying how we currently have a certain level of biodiversity in the actual world, in our world. But the only reason that reaches a cap is because of the amount of sunlight that hits the ground. Now, in a virtual world that's run on a proper real physics engine, you can increase the amount of energy given to the ground by this virtual sun. And the wonderful worlds that you could create go far beyond anything that we could possibly expect in our world, simply because we can just step around all these physical limitations to the worlds that we can create.
That's a very exciting. I mean, that's very exciting to me, at least.
Yeah, I can't wait to get my Rift.
Yeah, same here. But Daniel, do you think it'll be fine too? It won't really, like Disney World we were using as an example. They'll be entrepreneurs and they'll be fine, or will we see some heads turn?
Oh, I think you're definitely going to see some heads turn. If it's hard to predict societal opinion and stuff on this about the future. It's easy to predict what sort of things will be feasible by graphs and exponentially increasing technologies and stuff like that, because those are numbers. But when you're talking about people, it's very hard. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it's probably going to go about the same way that like the music business has gone, where there's a period where people are freaking out. It's the first period where people are getting a hold of this technology and going and instead of paying Disney World to see Disney World, they're just downloading it for free off of a site. So you're going to see that panic where content creators are just clutching at everything they can to protect what they've known as income over the past however long they've been in business. And then you're going to see the next phase would sort of be a slow acceptance to morph into the sort of economy that has now been created. Now it's not feasible for Disneyland to do A, B, and C. They have to provide so much online and so much in the real world. And I can draw a quick analogy to the magazine industry and sort of the iPad. They did a really good job, in my opinion. Well, some of them did. They did a really good job of really quickly adapting to the market and putting their magazines on the iPad. Now, whether people are going to subscribe to that and pay money, or are going to read free blogs or free stuff online they can find anywhere else, that's up to the market to decide. But there's that period of panic, and then it settles a lot longer. Panic probably would last about 5 years, and it would settle over the next 25 or so.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, because just thinking of myself now, because I would get hardcore with this if we eventually got to the point where you couldn't tell the difference between. I mean, what if they even make it so that VR is better than real life, just feels better? You're doing better in the economy, you make yourself a badass. Why would you want to come back to that world? Would we be like that movie Surrogates, where we just you connect yourself to some tubes and then just go be a bala in the other world? Anyway, fun discussion. Should we?
Well, pulling it back, if I could just pull it back 10, 15 years or so to the current present day, I'd like to go around the virtual table if we could. And so, who saw that commercial before they knew it was fake, before they knew it was CG? Out of the two of you, did any of you?
I don't remember it. No, I don't remember it.
Okay. I don't actually watch TV at all. I get all my content online.
Because I saw that as a YouTube pre-roll, and I thought it was just rehashed footage of Audrey Hepburn. Like, I didn't know that was fake. So, I mean, it successfully fooled me. I don't know if it whether either of you went in without knowing already that you were going to be fooled, but I literally thought this is just what this is, because I could tell it was Audrey Hepburn, but I thought, they've just taken some old footage and they've done some recoloring on it and they made it look better, and they've done a clever trick, bit of CG. I thought the car was CG and not the and not anything else. So yeah,
that's interesting.
If that's where they're at already, then
yeah,
just think about the possibilities.
So they made that from scratch, is what you're saying? Like every movement of hers, or they traced it off the original. I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, she's CG in there.
Right.
Her likeness is CG. Everything else is real life. They've put her into it. I think they probably had a body actor be her. Like a green dressed up green person with ping pong balls stuck to them. I'd imagine is how they did it. But when I saw it, I thought that they just took old footage of hers and just recolored it and made it look up to scratch. So
Yeah.
it's very interesting just how well that was done, despite all the people in the comment section on Reddit saying, "Oh, it looks terrible." Like, "Oh, I can tell the way her hair moves." It's like, no, if you hadn't known already that it was going to be fake, then you wouldn't have noticed it.
Would you notice it? I mean, now that you do know and you're watching, if you watch the advert again, I think you may pick up on a couple of things, like the animation not being as it looks maybe a little too stiff or something like that. Now that you do know,
Yeah.
but
And
the
also,
fact
she
that
doesn't talk.
yeah, that's a good one. So now that you do know, you'd probably figure it out. But the big thing is that you didn't know and you were fooled, and that's where the astonishing comes out of the article. That's pretty big. Today.
Yeah. Alex, do you want to take us home with that last link?
Is it me leading into the final one? This is a post, the fifth most upvoted post of the last 30 days, with 645 upvotes, posted by Erdbeer Tea, which I think is German for strawberry, with the word T at the end. And it was 15-year-old invents new method of diagnosing cancer, which is 168 faster, 26,000 times cheaper, and 400% more reliable than common methods. He did most of his research via Google. And this was this is a kid. I believe he's done a TED talk at the most recent the most recent TED session. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think his talk's online as of recording of this podcast, but it might be soon. And it was a kid who was he interning in a lab, or he was just doing a summer thing in a lab, and he was working with the people there and managed to...
I think he was interning.
He was interning, and he managed to piece some stuff together that turned out to be a pancreatic cancer diagnostic technology.
Yeah. There's a little more that goes on behind this, though. This kid, he lost a family friend, a really close family friend died to this cancer, and when he started doing the research, he saw that there really weren't any good ways to test for this cancer, and the ways you could test for this cancer were extremely expensive. They were inefficient, and most of the time the people died anyway because they wouldn't find him in time. So he just strapped himself to a chair and started doing research. He even got scolded from his science teacher because he was doing this research on this cancer. And it's funny because even to this day, because the epiphany or whatever came to him in her class, and she scolded him for it. And I know you said that there is some controversy around this story. Like people thought he may have been handed some breadcrumbs. Isn't that what you said?
Something like that. Oh, the raging comments on Reddit, as usual, were saying, "Oh, of course, it couldn't have been him. How could he possibly?" What they did is they just gave him, they told him A implies B and B implies C, and they managed to get him to somehow use his brain to work out that A implies C, and I think that's what people are raging about. But I have seen no real proof that he didn't. I know you can't properly prove a negative, but there's no real proof that it was someone else that did it and not him. And if he's been invited to TED and he's had a whole lot of publicity about it, then I think that we should believe him. And either way, it doesn't really matter who did it. The important thing is that there's a new pancreatic cancer diagnostic out there.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing, that there's this new way of diagnosing cancer that's out there, and that's pretty important. Yeah.
Well, more importantly than that, I think is the entire meaning. But I mean, there's a hidden meaning here, and that is that you can do anything now. A 15-year-old with an internet connection and Google and Wikipedia, that's all he used, was able to do this. And earlier, before we were recording, we were talking about how education is overrated. Like, well, why aren't the doctors and the professionals in this field finding cures? Why is a 15-year-old? Well, because a 15-year-old who has drive because this disease killed a family friend, and he has the exact same tools as a doctor making six figures, it just shows everybody that a 15-year-old kid has just as much pull as a doctor, well, if not more, because look what he did in this field. And we're going to start seeing a lot more of this. And I know you guys are both pretty young too, right?
I am 17. Yes.
And I'm 22, which is apparently the peak of most mathematicians' ability. So, yeah.
Well, so
but
a little bit of a... Oh, sorry, excuse me. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was just going to ask you guys because, I mean, when you were 16, Alex, you can remember when you were 15, 16, did you already had the internet then and probably broadband? I mean, I'm sure you've done things, I'm sure you've seen work of professionals in the field that, I don't know, maybe you have not been impressed with, or you found other ways to, just by doing your own research, you were able to prove something wrong or just figure something out. So I'm sure you guys can both attest to the fact that, with a little bit of drive and an internet connection, a lot of things are possible.
Well, at the very least, you get kids like myself who are working on a project for their class, or something like that. I did a project when I was doing what's called my A-levels, which is the thing you do before you go to university, college. And I was doing a project on solar sails, which is a method of space propulsion. And I found that the Wikipedia was wrong, and I corrected it myself. So
nice.
That's the kind of thing. I mean, it's not the same as finding a pancreatic cancer thing, but it's vaguely contributing to the sum of all human knowledge by correcting some of the maths on a Wikipedia page. So,
Daniel, did you have anything else that you wanted to add to this kid?
Yeah, I mean, he's young, and I think that's interesting in a number of ways, some of which we've already touched on. But I think, to me, I don't live in a big city. I don't live, where there's a lot of people who are plugged in, if you will, to technology, what's going on. So most of these concepts like 3D printing and whatnot just fly over people's heads here. And, as I think the best thing that's ever happened to me was to just log on to the internet and just sort of be thrown into this world of, I can do almost anything that I want to. And, at 15, that's when I started writing music. And granted, it was not good. It was not anywhere to what you'd call a professional or anything like that recording, but just the fact that I had done something just was so self-empowering that I pursued it, and it led me decently well into where I am now, and where I'm headed. So stories like this really hit home with self-empowerment and how there are tools out there for anyone to do almost anything. And the sad thing is, and I don't want to end on a sad note, but the sad thing is that, I see people all the time around here that want to do something, they just don't know how to. And on top of that, they don't know that the tools that they need to accomplish what they really want to do in life are out there and they're free. So it's that is sad, because there's so much that people could do and they just don't know it. It's not that they're stupid and they don't want to know it. It's just that they're ignorant of it. And that's nothing to blame them for. It's just that they're ignorant of it. And I think that a good question would be, how do we get people, the average person, to realize what this sort of technology and just the entire idea of futurology, how does that relate to him, and why is that a big pull in his life? Because people don't realize how big some of these things could be.
Yeah, it's something that Peter Diamandis talks about when he discusses the X Prize, and it's the idea that there's a whole lot of people who have the capacity to do something great, and they're just not. They never thought to do it, or they didn't know the tools were available. For example, when there was the X Prize for oil cleanup, for example, teams got together to sort out this oil cleanup challenge, for which there was a monetary prize, and they were finding that there were some of these teams where oil industry people were coming up to the team and said, well, how long have you been in oil for? And they were saying, like, counting today. These people had the real capacity to enact all these changes. They just either don't do it because they're stuck in regular jobs or whatever. And there needs to be these ways of teasing out all this potential, this latent capacity for real change that's bubbling underneath society, and we just need to tap it. And things like this is great, and the tools that are available on the internet are wonderful for doing this kind of thing.
Do you think we're on the way to doing that? Do you think the reason this happens is because, I mean, the internet is still relatively, it's still pretty new. And do you think that once more people have access, there won't be that anymore? I mean, I don't think it'll be... I don't think it'll solve everybody's problems, but I think that just connecting more people has huge benefits.
Yeah, even just in the networking way. Even just taking three people from different places on the planet and putting them together in one podcast, for example. Mm-hmm. The networking capacity of the internet alone is great, let alone all these tools and things like Khan Academy and ways of teaching yourselves and Wikipedia and all of that.
I think that where there's a problem, there's always a solution, and where there's a solution, there's always room for an entrepreneur to come in and figure out the solution, to most efficiently solve the problem. So I think very, very soon we may see a lot of new education, getting people plugged into sort of the here and now of technology online, sort of, because that's an issue and it needs to be solved. Mm-hmm. Someone's going to come up with an idea and possibly make money off of it, but who knows? So I'm optimistic in the sense that a lot of these things are on the way to be solved, if not have been solved already and just haven't made it down to us yet.
So get out there, listeners, and do your part.
Yeah, and lastly, what I wanted to bring up, I think also that the age that we consider someone an adult, which is 18 or even 21 in some cases, I think that's starting to go down, and eventually it'll go away too when you see that a 15-year-old can find not a cure for cancer, but a cancer test. Eventually we'll see them, a 15-year-old curing cancer. And I mean, we've got 16-year-olds composing and creating content. So do you know what I mean? I think that age is that whole you're not an adult until you're 18 thing is gonna go away too.
Yeah, we're gonna reach an age of prodigies.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, I think prodigies, because of the fact that they realize the potential of the tools out there, like the internet and connecting with people and cheap software programs to make music, stuff like that. So just because people understand that gives them such a huge edge, in whatever they want to do, whether it's curing cancer, making music, or doing YouTube videos, even in that sense.
Excellent. Do you guys have any? Before I ask about your where people can follow you, do you guys have any closing statements for the links we covered tonight?
Yeah, I do. If you're a young person and you're listening to this and you haven't gone to college yet, think about what you love and what fields you think that you might be able to enact a change in if only you have the tools. And then, if money was no object, what would you do? And then, instead of just going, oh, but I'll never be able to do that, look for the tools, because you find they might be available to you when you thought they weren't. And even just making the slightest change, the slightest impact, is from a career perspective incredibly impressive. I mean, do you think this kid is not set for life, but do you think he's always going to have an edge over his peers when it comes to jobs and things like that, and research funding? If you're somebody who thinks that they'll be able to do something, just give them the tools. Look for the tools, because they might be there.
Cool. And Daniel, where can people follow your work or see what you're doing?
I can be found on almost any social network site. On Twitter, I'm at DYuntMusic. On Facebook, I have a page, Daniel Yount. Also, if you follow the Yogscast or any of the stuff that they're doing, you can hear my music there. I can also be found on iTunes, or there as well. I think that covers it.
Alex, how about you?
And you can find any of my stuff at anything/SpeakMouthWords.
Cool. And I am Blinkers Goes Left, and just to let you guys know, we do have some bandwidth issues, and I'm sorry for that. I'm just buying the basic package right now on Podbean, and I feel bad for you guys who get to the podcast later in the month and the bandwidth is already up. So hopefully in the next coming weeks I'll be able to reach out to some, I don't know, maybe a solar company who wants to do some advertising, and we can put in a little 15-second commercial before the podcast, and maybe they can pay for our bandwidth. Who knows? Check us out. We're on Reddit /r/Futurology. Thanks a lot, guys.
See you next time.
Adios.